Former President Donald Trump is facing even more criminal charges after a fourth indictment was filed against him just late last night. Now, so far, the public response from members of the Republican Party has been largely supportive. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy tweeted this last night. You see it on your screen, quote, "Justice should be blind, but Biden has weaponized government against his leading political opponent to interfere in the 2024 election," end quote. However, fellow GOP presidential candidate Asa Hutchinson released this statement last night, saying in part, quote, "Over a year ago, I said that Donald Trump's actions disqualified him from ever serving as president again. Those words are more true today than ever before." For more on this response to the indictment, let's bring in CBS News political director Fin Gómez at our D.C. bureau. Fin, these responses seem pretty on par for the course in terms of what people have been saying about ever since the first indictment of the former president. What stands out to you, though, this time around? Because we are getting a sense that these charges are different.
Yeah, these charges are different, Errol, and I think that for the most part what we have seen is what we have seen before in the previous indictments, is that there really hasn't been this big reaction from the Republican field. The few statements that we have seen, as you mentioned, Errol, have been essentially critical of Donald Trump, with Asa Hutchinson, Will Hurd, another Republican rival, who've been critical of him and of his basically his legitimacy as a candidate heading into this next debate, which is happening in a week, Errol, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the first debate. But speaking to some senior advisors to these campaigns, rival campaigns to Donald Trump, one top advisor said that he thought that these were the most serious of the charges, and that voters should see the outcome of both Georgia and the Jack Smith investigations before voting starts. And I think you're seeing some of that, but that's also being said with the essentially the armor or the veneer of speaking on background. So you really don't have this public outpouring of criticism. Because why, Errol? Because the former president still remains he remains the early frontrunner, and he still is by a wide margin. So the fact that Fani Willis, of course, the Fulton County DA, set a deadline for August 25th, just a couple days after the first debate, after that first Republican debate, also puts a lot of focus on that first debate. And if Donald Trump will show up, he, of course, has said that he would not sign the RNC pledge to support whomever the nominee is, which is part of the criteria for making the stage.
The White House is not responding to any of these charges against Trump. What's the strategy behind the silence?
You know, that's an interesting question, because for the most part, when I spoke to Democrats close to the president's political operation, they told me that essentially part of the strategy here by President Biden is to sort of be above the fray, to be presidential and not entangle himself with what they see is a mess, essentially, on the Republican side, with this entanglement of these Trump indictments, and essentially to offer a contrast between what's happening with the Biden administration, again, President Biden focusing on his presidential duties, and essentially what they say is a Republican Party that's in disarray, essentially.
And so for folks who are keeping track, Fin, former President Trump now faces 91 criminal charges. And I think it will take time for his supporters to absorb the reality of what's happening here, right? People are busy, they're on their summer breaks. But how does this complicate his second run for office?
Well, right now, Errol, and I think that's a great point, but right now, Errol, you're not really seeing that impact right now. Like, again, if anything, there's just been sense of a collective circling of the wagons around the former president right now. Even hearing some of the potential caucus goers in Iowa over the weekend, hearing some of the reporting from there, it really isn't impacting those voters, but instead it's sort of motivating them. They feel there's a sense of obligation, a party loyalty, to defend what they think is a politicized investigations, politicized investigations towards Donald Trump. However, is that sustainable? A lot of these trials, they're not. The dates aren't set, but some of them will be set. I mean, they could be right in the middle of the general election. We know that. Well, in the documents case, the Mar-a-Lago case, but there's also here in Washington the potential for the trial date to start in that Jack Smith J6 investigation. That could start on January, just in early January, just like less than 2 weeks before the Iowa caucuses are supposed to set on January 15th. So at a certain point, you're right, Errol, the Republican voters start focusing, and once they do that, is there this major candidate equality issue where they say to themselves, can the former president beat Joe Biden? For some, it's an easy answer. He has very high numbers right now, but we'll see if it's sustainable.
Yeah, we'll certainly suck up a lot of time and money in the meantime.
For sure. Fin Gómez, thank you so much.
Thanks, Fin.
Thank you.
Be sure to join us all day tomorrow for special coverage from the Iowa State Fair. And you can stream an hour-long edition of America Decides live from the fair at 5 p.m. Eastern.